What is going on, Macro Perspective peeps? Seamus and Marcos back with another great episode. Oh man, I'm super excited for this one. Dr. Kelly Starrett is here with us today, and he has been pivotal to a lot of my knowledge and my learnings, partly because he was one of the reasons I got into movement culture, got my degree in exercise science. I wanted to be a physical therapist, read all his books. But Dr. Kelly Starrett, quick intro on him. He's worked with some of the best in the CrossFit space, in the sports performance rehab space, and has written, 4 books now? 5 books or something, and he's coming out with more. So he's coming up with the 6th book, and we had him for a little bit last time. Had some technical difficulties, but here's the thing: in this world, in this day and age, the way things move, we just got to keep going, and we're lucky to have him back. So, Dr. Kelly, sorry, thanks so much for coming back on. We'll continue this conversation from where we left last time.
Yeah, where were we? Right? Let's go. We have so much to talk about.
I feel like we started diving into some of the structures of sports with kids. Is that what it was? It was based on the premise of your new book, which is it out already, or is it like
we're
pre-order?
I wish. Unfortunately, we are in the grind process. We just submitted the manuscript, and now we are, or not manuscript, but the proposal, which is just like writing a PhD, just a quick 100 pages. And then right now we're in the process, everyone, no one cares about this, but you get to meet with publishers and figure out who is going to be your best partner in trying to break through the information, super jet stream to see if we can blow this thing up into the sphere. But ultimately interested in seeing can we help families make better sense of what's going on in the chaos that is youth sports right now.
And that's where we were. And then there was tech issues, and then we couldn't get a hold of your audiovisual guy because he was on vacation, I think.
That's right.
So yeah, youth sports, crazy enough, this Seamus loves the word serendipity, but it is serendipitous. I had a individual reach out to me today. He's a track coach, or cross country and track, but cross country season is upon us. And he was just talking about, he's like, do you mind coming in and talking about proper fueling and nutrition for my kids? Because a lot of them might be going the wrong way with how they're approaching to perform at the highest level, because they think performing at the highest level means performing at the lowest body weight for their sport. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting topic. Yeah, we don't have an episode on that either, but hey, we can talk about that a little bit today, and I'm sure it carries over to what you're talking about too.
Yeah, I think fundamentally, let's begin that parents do not have PhDs in nutrition. They're not clinical nutrition experts. They probably are thinking about the orange slice maybe they had back when they were in 5th grade soccer. So fundamentally, we haven't prepared athletes and teams to really own this, what we're finding out to be, of course, hugely important aspect of, preparation, of actual performance, and then very much recovery. And, no one's fault, but now let's go ahead and level everyone up. And one of the problems, I think, is we're seeing that coaches are now asked to be able to do that. So if you're middle school coach, high school coach, or suddenly we're like, hey, by the way, I know you got to teach these kids and you got to win and deal with all these things, and you probably have a life and you're making $3,000 for this 6-month investment of time, but also I need you to have a PhD in nutrition so you can talk about fueling. So this is our hypothesis, that parents have to be the high performance directors for their families. And I just want to set this up for everyone who's listening. Your job as a parent to a teen athlete is to be chief reminder. No 16-year-old athlete is going to be like, hey, I know how to fuel. I got it, mom. I made myself breakfast. If the kid is doing that, they are already a total unicorn. And what you have to do literally is be like, I put the Uncrustable in your bag, and we need to make sure that you're getting some calories in during this thing. What I just, my daughter and my wife are away playing at a water polo tournament. We're in water polo season. And on the WhatsApp group chat, I'm like, great, we won. The kids need 100 grams of carbs in the next hour. And then the next hours after that, they're getting another 100 grams of carbs because we have another game. And then we have a whole series of games tomorrow. And as we know, because the research has said, by the way, you can totally deplete your muscle glycogen and it will not replenish itself for a long time. Your liver glycogen will replenish. But that means we have to be fueled for these multiple events. And what does that look like? What's available? Can you go to Jamba Juice? Can you go to, what's quick and easy to eat? What's hyper palatable? Yeah. This is not the time for us to, obviously I'm like, Cane's chicken is not in there. Maybe don't eat a double-double, but this is not the place and the time to talk about nutrition. This is the time to talk about sports and performance fueling. And when we get into the problems with that, the kid, they looked really sluggish. I'm like, yeah, she was totally underfueled. right? She ate breakfast 5 hours ago. What did you think was going to happen? So there are some things we've got to level up for sure. And one of the big mistakes that I think we're seeing right now is that fitness is being sold to our kids on TikTok, on Instagram.
Right.
And fitness is not the same. I'm going to call it fitnessing. Being shredded in the gym is not the same thing as elite performance. So we want to start using this performance language, with our athletes so that we can avoid relative energy deficiency in sports. We can avoid these microfractures. We can see this underfueling. And when it starts to come together with poor sleep, poor nutrition, et cetera, no strength conditioning, what we start to see is a perfect storm. And it's really comes down to what can we control. And we can remember that if you were 17 once, you were able to cut off your hand and it would grow back the next day. I mean, that's literally what the kids were. So you really have to mess up. And it's easy to not mess up if you just make it easy and palatable for your kids.
Yeah. No, man, I really appreciate that reminder, because I think one of the biggest things, and this is just me growing up, and I'm not saying this about everybody, but like when you're in sports and you have busy parents, right? Or even like a single parent, them being the PhD in nutrition is not going to happen, right? They're trying to make ends meet. They're just getting the groceries in, and like, is it the best foods that we care about, right? Like the fitnessing, how it looks like on social media, is it organic, whatever, like it does not matter at this point. The kid needs fuel, get him in there. I wish this was kind of the mindset given, because in a sport like mine, or kind of like a sport kind of what Marco's just talking about, like wrestling, combat sports, there's a lot of this weight issues, energy deficiency issues, hormone issues, because they care about a weight, they care about a look. And it's problematic because then you start worrying about the kid's anxiety around food. How is this going to make me look? But the problem with that is then if you're worrying about that, you're never going to perform. And I felt that, right? I felt that. I saw that within other athletes. And it's just a good reminder to the parents that, hey, we just need to gently remind our kids, we need to keep an eye on them. We're not helicopter parents, but also at the same time, hey, double check, give a quick look and make sure that you're checking in. Because sometimes if you're not, I think what can happen is kids can go down a rabbit hole, right? Especially with technology nowadays, and they can be influenced by that in such a way. So I do appreciate you reminding folks that it's not about this fitnessing thing.
Well, and one of the issues is that we have taught people that body composition is fitness, and that a V shred and being, hyper skinny is what elite performance looks like. And there are mutants out there who do that, but that is absolutely not the case. And to your point, one of the things we're trying to do is constrain the environment so we get the right outcome. So let me give you an example. When we are running teams, like for our junior Olympic teams, for our club, after games, especially at tournaments, we have a cooler. And in that cooler are multiple choices. We've got soy chocolate milk. We've got non-dairy options. We've got those, 20-gram Chobani's. We've got chocolate milk. And we create just inexpensive options. And a youth athlete has to walk by. When I say child, I'm talking about 17-year-olds. Has to walk by, and I have to watch them take it and start to drink it. And so I don't make it optional. Which one of these are you going to have right afterwards? I know you don't want to eat right now. That's not what it's about. Like you just lost. You're not hungry. Like blah blah blah, right? But that's not my concern. My concern is that I need you to be fueled so we don't run into these things. So that's an example. Let me give you another example. My wife and I have a 3-vegetable rule. So at dinner, we try to make dinner as often as we can, sit down as a family, because that's an elite biohack skill that makes better families, right? And we cook 3 different vegetables every night. And guess what? For 17 years, I have a 20-year-old. She's been exposed to 3 vegetables every night. And when they were little kids, They didn't eat 3 vegetables. They maybe ate 1 vegetable or had a bite of 2 vegetables. But now what we try to do is say, hey, look, part of having tissues that can do what we need them to do, you got to have micronutrients on board. You got to have fiber on board. And so when my daughter, I have a 17-year-old, she's a senior in high school. She's committed to play D1 water polo next year. I let her sleep in till 7:15. And then I make her breakfast, not because she can't make breakfast, but this allows her to sleep. So we prioritize the sleep. So I know she's in bed sleeping for over 8 hours. And then she leaves the house. But before she leaves the house with usually a yogurt protein drink, or I got to get that into the probiotic, I make her some kind of sandwichy thing with tons of protein in there. We send her off that, and I cut up an apple for her. In the morning, though, she drinks an Emergency, which has been around for 100 years, but is very palatable, and I know she'll drink it. And I dump her creatine in there, and I give her vitamin D. So she has this little like pill pile, right? And she has her Emergency, and she leaves the door with some micronutrients on board, with some potential fiber going out the way. And what we try to do is say, I make it so easy, because if you let that kid go, she's going to sleep in as long as she can. She's going to do her hair, get her homework, and run out. And maybe now we're out in the wild and we're not going to have fueling. Now my kid is behind the rest of the day. So even if that for you is, I put out, my kid can tolerate milk, here's a milk, here's a snack. Like what does that look like for your family? It could be, hey, I need you to grab a banana or an orange. It doesn't even have to be sophisticated, but we have to make sure that we're putting in on the bookends of the day some agency and some control as parents, where I know that my kids are getting micronutrients and protein and fiber, because that's how we're going to have tissues that, set themselves up. And kids, believe it or not, who are fueled, sleep better.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, and also too, I think for everybody also taking this in terms of like the context of performance, right? Like we're speaking specifically to the athlete here, right? I think for individuals that have a high energy demand, they're doing a sport that's burning a ton of calories, such as water polo or extended durations, like those little bookends are so important, like you said, because it is what the parents can't control. And then there's obviously a conversation that's maybe completely different for kids that are, maybe more of the studious nature, engineer types and whatnot. Like there's a different protocol for them. I would like people to like know that as well. Like,
that protocol is, there's going to be less peanut butter and jelly. There's less, right? Like we're still going to lean into 3 vegetables, doing all the things. Ultimately, if we're talking about fueling young people, you've got to meet the basic nutrition needs for a growing brain and body. My kids do not eat fish. They inherited my sense of smell, and they're like, we don't eat fish, Dad. There's no fish in our house. There'll never be fish in our house. I couldn't get them to choke down salmon for $1 million. So my kids take an omega before they go to bed. And, we see this as, I need to have this brain and this body prepared to do what it needs to do. And that means I'm going to look at the places where we have opportunities to put in the most nutritious food available to us. And when my kid leaves the house and when she comes back, I don't know what happens. But on those bookends, I have a little agency and control. So you're absolutely right around making sure that the conversations around meals and learning how to cook and prepare and sitting down together. We follow a model that for most of our athletes, when we're not needing to talk about body composition, right? Where we say the first thing is, let's hit minimum protein needs. For adults, we say 0.8 grams. For kids, we're really trying to push to 1 grams of protein per pound body weight. And then we try to get 800 grams of fruits and vegetables. That's not 800 grams of carbs, everyone. That's 800 grams of fruits and vegetables. That's 4 big apples a day. And you will spend the rest of your life following your kids around trying to get them to eat enough fruits and vegetables. That is just the way it's going to go. And
Brilliant.
What we see, though, is in that, then we can add in rice. We can add in peanut butter and jelly. We can add in sweet potatoes and all the other things we need to add. But those basics will help that child or that growing body and brain do what it needs to do. And the problem is we're not only just fueling for a growing body, but we're also then fueling for activity. And most of the young kids who come up to me and want to talk, remember, I'm just a physical therapist and a coach, but the kids who want, I have a lot of young boys who come to me and they're like, hey, I want to try to put on some muscle. I'm like, great, you're not eating enough. It's impossible. It's really, you have to start to realize that there's going to be a cost for performance. And that cost is a little bit more discipline, and the cost is a little bit more sort of intention. And then we can strategize about a way to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like you just mentioned something too, like, this is kind of like a passion project. I'm bringing my mom in with me. So this is like a family venture now. Next week, we're going to, at this time next week, we'll actually be with a group of kids that are athlete driven. There's a school here in town called the Pente Academy. They have like 50 students that are they're basically athlete students. Like they go to school like 2 hours a day. It's all online. Like their focus is trying to get to the next level of sport, which I can appreciate. That's like a really unique thing. And you can shoot, I feel like I'm still learning at 30. You know what I mean? Like once you stop learning, you're dead, right? Like that's how you should view it, right? So we get this opportunity to go in there. I get to get my mom to use her now retired math brain to think about, she also did culinary. I was like, how do we make this fun, informative, something that's hands-on that they can learn and bring home. And then also think about the food when they're gone on these trips, when they're playing soccer or playing hockey, right? Like you just said, like, how do you get them to have the agency to pick the right things? Like you said, not going after the double because that's where we're going, but like focusing on like, oh yeah, like maybe that isn't enough carbs, or that's kind of like, that's just kind of heavy, like, the conversations of that. So it's like a really cool experience to do that. Whereas a lot of the people I work with day to day are, they want to lose weight. They're trying to get off medications, right? So it's like I get to flip my brain into this and then also think about like, what do these kids know? What are their parents are willing to pay? Obviously, this is like a private school essentially, but their parents are probably busy. They may not be able to bookend those meals, but the kids might be able to, like, they're willing to do that. And they probably don't even, I don't even know. I'm gonna be like, hey, who here knows how to hold a knife? So our first lesson next week is literally basic knife skills, cuts, things like that, showing it, right? Food safety, like little basics things that they're like, oh, wow, like I didn't know that you should cut a carrot this way to cook it faster. Like we don't know what they know at this point. And then obviously talking about like those nutritional components, like you're saying, hey, we're literally doing that. We have 3 vegetables. And I was like, I don't want to just do broccoli. Let's do broccoli, carrot, like simple ones. Show them how to cut it, make a stir fry. All right, cool. Like, so it's like this whole next level thing I'm really stoked about.
Why wouldn't we use sport as a framework to teach these skills? Look, if you have an engineering student, that's cool too. It's going to be more difficult to have this conversation because sometimes the inputs and outputs are hidden a little bit more. And sport really does give us a perfect scaffolding to teach fundamental life skills. In fact, I believe now that, with not having home ec and all the demands on kids, the amount of homework my kids have are insane. We have to figure out a place and a time and a framework to say, hey, how do we teach you to be a fundamentally human being? You're going to leave sports someday. You will leave sport. You're going to retire from high school. I have one retired athlete already who was like, I'm not playing in college. Like she could have, but she's like, I'm going to go study econ at the University of Michigan. And, there's no way I'm going to be some broke athlete. Like she's just not into it, She's grown up around. So, but simultaneously, sport really does give us the opportunity to teach these skills. How do you calm down? Where's mindset? Why do we protect sleep? How do we do this? And you're right to not overlook the fact that maybe kids haven't been empowered to cook or they don't know where to start. My daughter, Georgia, who's a third year at Michigan, is living in an apartment with friends, and many of her friends cannot cook, and they are gobsmacked at Georgia's ability to make food and cook, saute up some beef and ginger and some veggies and put over rice with an egg. And they're like, how did you know how to do that? And she's like, how do you not know how to do that? So again, I think sometimes this first conversation of fueling can be empowering and to give that choice back to the kids. But I still see these errors where, in the middle of the season last year, I had multiple Division I women say, hey, I want to change my body composition. I'm like, we're 2 weeks away from the NCAA finals. We're not doing anything with your body composition.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Right afterwards, if you want to recomp your body, we got all summer. We can talk about that then.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I just want to emphasize that going into college, one of the best coaches, I went to like a speed sports summit back in like 2015. He literally said to me, the biggest gift you can give a freshman college athlete, or any freshman really, especially a woman, is confidence that they are autonomous. And that may mean in the weight room, right? Like they know all their Oldie lifts, they knew their mobility, so that they're already on the program when the strength and conditioning coach programs them.
Yes.
But I think the cooking aspect is another one, because it's like, as an athlete or just a college student, if you are not anxious about where your food is coming from and you could handle that, I mean, just how much easier is life going to be? You can go and study, you can go hang out with friends and be like, I know where my fuel is coming from. I know where it's going. I think there is that anxiety of like, oh man, I have to go to that store. When is it closed? When is it open? Do they have the things that I want to have? It kind of brings in a little bit of anxiety. But no, I appreciate that. I want to kind of move this here because I know we talked about last time. Is it okay to say the title of your new book?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll play.
Brilliant title. Brilliant title. It's going to be another New York bestseller, I bet. And I know you're probably going to go on a run. Obviously, the nutrition component is a big component of that. What is the next thing that you were trying to scaffold with parents and trying to teach them, or kind of understanding of like what sport has looked like now? I think we kind of got into it thinking about like, kids almost have like a CEO type schedule, and you're thinking about playing sport, but now are they playing or are they like being primed to be like a pro star and like they're too specialized. They never generalized. They've only done one sport their whole life. Like, are these the things that you're kind of like talking about? Run us through some of those.
But you are touching on one of the problems. And if you have kids, you'll understand that swimming upstream against the very powerful river of sports specialization and year-round club activity, good luck. You're going to just go insane. And what the easy sort of throwaway solution to that for early specialization is make your kid play two sports. I'm like, cool. Now they can specialize in two sports. Great. So now we have even less time. And now my kid is going to elite travel club soccer and elite travel club, racquetball and elite travel, whatever the sports are. And now we just added complexity to the system. So, I think it's a real strong tell that private equity is trying to come into the youth sports industrial complex, which is a gigantic, gigantic money-making machine. And so I think that tells us about the commoditization. One of the things we're going to try to do is most professional organizations now have what we call a high-performance director. And that person oversees strength and conditioning. They oversee nutrition. They oversee the sports med. They oversee the sports psych. A parent really needs a little bit of a primer or a field manual about how to manage that. And all of those things, what you ask me is, hey, which one of them is important? And what I'm saying, which one is you're going to pull out, right? You need to be able to talk about how are you going to calm down before this game? How are you going to manage this anxiety? How do you communicate with a coach or a tough, teammate who you don't like? I mean, this is why I say sport teaches us all the lessons that we probably need, but not the lessons we think we're going to get from how do I feel between these events? One of the things that we really want people to appreciate is that this body is really a complex system. It's very durable and it's very anti-fragile. In fact, these stresses make us better, more resilient humans. The promise of sport, I think we all agree, and if we all did sport and had that promise, is that somehow we're going to be better people because of it. There's a reason why a lot of CEOs will be like, oh, you're a Division I athlete, hired. Why? Because I know you have been vetted in the process of how to work as a team, how to show up on time, how to organize your schedule, how to manage big moments. Like, there's a whole lot of delayed gratification that we've learned, and can see from your experience being an athlete in college. But that is a tiny percentage of people who are going to go play in college. This doesn't happen very often. It's very, very small. So what we have to do is say, hey, look, the pinnacle of most youth sports is going to be high school. And our goal should be to keep as many, I think it's Norway who had this great idea. It's like, we're going to have the most kids for the longest play, those two things. And what we're seeing is that a lot of kids really drop out of sport early at about age 13, 14. We lose a huge chunk of the cohort. It's not fun. It's become commoditized, the pressures, the time demands. And I can understand why kids are like, screw this. This isn't fun.
Yeah.
And we, as parents, we're like, oh, we signed you up. We're just rolling right into the next thing. And what we really have to do is be a little bit more meta and sit down and create a framework as a family of saying, okay, what are our goals? What are we going to do? Where do we put in these barriers? How do we protect our family unit and protect our kids? And it could be as easily as, hey, this is what we know we have to do around sleep. And hey, we're going to have to figure out ways to get you strength training and doing some movement training as the second sport. That maybe is going to be kettlebell swings and box jumps and play and frisbee in the garage. Or, you're going to have to go out and, instead of you, parent, burned out, you need to go throw the ball and play spike ball with your kids for a few minutes. So we have to think differently about the problem. And if we just improve those aspects, because we're a complex system, we will start to see tremendous benefit where kids don't burn out. As you guys saw, this research that just came out that basically sleep deprivation leads to burnout across deep into the collegiate sports season. And we're all like, yeah, no shit. Like, we knew that was going to happen. But if we look at the data right now, the number of kids, I think it's a tiny percentage who are actually getting 8 hours of sleep. And guess what? Parents, you're listening to this, adults, you're listening to this. If you want to change your body composition, I need you to sleep more. If you want to get stronger, I need you to sleep more. If you want to grow a body or learn a skill, I need you to sleep more. If you want to heal from an injury or a surgery, I need you to sleep more. If you want to choose the thing you care about. And what we just saw is new research that said poor sleep leads to sensitized tissues. You're going to have more pain if you don't sleep. Guess who's not sleeping? Your kids. So what the hell are we talking about?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that though. I saw another study too that the thing that's actually even more important than the actual hours necessarily is the consistency of wake and bedtime. Like, so I mean, like, okay, you can actually get 7 and like do it consistently. That might actually have a stronger correlative benefit than like thinking, okay, I went to bed at 9, now I got to sleep those 8, right?
Well, what else? Look, good for you. Like, you don't have a senior in high school with friends and, who's going to, you know what I mean? Like, what I'm saying is, I agree. Now, let's
Yeah.
not let good be the enemy of great, because
Yes.
at least we're going to have a consistent wake up time, which turns out to be really important because we have to go to school at some point. But you're
Mhm.
absolutely right, is that the brain, we want to teach our kids that actually you can feel better and have clearer skin and be more awake in class and have better performance if we can just do a better job. Hey, we turn the lights off. Like, our daughter is a senior, right? She is an independent, badass woman. And our deal is you got to have lights off by 10:30. 11 at the
Yep.
latest. And that's a non-negotiable for our family, right? And so that's really important, that she is busting her ass to get that stuff done, because as our family, we're like, phones are off, everything's off, 10:30, 11 at the latest, so that you can at least lay in bed for 8 hours. So I agree with you 100%. And
Yep.
simultaneously, what I would say is, what can we control in this situation? And how do we make it germane to the conversation?
Yeah, and I think again, like you're saying here, like it's my kids are not your kids' age, right? I got another decade before that happens, right? And then I'm dealing
Don't
with
got
the
kids
problems
yet.
you're speaking of. And Seamus is not a father yet. Maybe he's in the process of that. But my kids won't go to bed unless we go to bed. So it like actually forces the schedule for me to be more on point, you know?
Well, what's going to happen is you're going to get screwed on this, and every parent is listening to this is like, you have to go to bed, but your kids are still up, because you're like, I can't stay up till 10:30. I'm in bed in the nines. I'm gonna sleep at 9:30 because I'm a maniac, and
Yep.
so I'm like, well, I hope my kid goes to bed. So now I have this thing where, like, I wake up at 10:30 and I'm like, what's going on? It's quiet or
What's
not
going
quiet?
on? Check,
So,
check the camera that was with the baby monitor.
Your adult kids are putting you to sleep.
Yeah, and well, again, I'm like, it's funny because I know that every year things just change, and every quarter right now they're just in such a growth phase with like just cognitively that I know it's going to change, and I'm always like so impressed to kind of see what's going on with like my 7 and 4 year old, right? Um, and then like the sleep thing, I'm like, well, again, like this actually benefits me to be like, hey, like we need to be lights out, like upstairs, like laying in bed by 9:30, because then they're going to get in bed and they're going to have that 8+ hours, like no problem, right? And it's like going back to what you said, is like you can only control what you can control. I don't need to be staying up watching TV to like wind down. I probably should be asleep, you know? So it just like you can use your kids as a thing that keeps you healthy and keep your
Beautiful.
weight.
I love that so much. And then we can layer on exercise on top of that. If you're like, my elite travel ball 14-year-old is not strength conditioning, she needs to start strength conditioning. You're like, great. Are you strength conditioning? Show me, like the food is there, the prep is there, the mindset is there. And look, you don't need a PhD in this. We just have to have a framework to be able to understand. And we need to do some rehearsal. How do you talk to a coach? How do you, ask for a raise? How are you going to talk to an athlete that you're playing with who, needs to get her act together or needs support? And one of the things that I'm really excited about with this project is I'm working on a deck. And don't steal this idea, anyone. I'll come for you. But we're creating a deck of cards as just a set of prompts so that we can rehearse and talk about some of these things at the dinner table, including our expectations and including just the parents' experience being athletes. And if we can use this a little bit in a more meta way about a framework, and then rinse, wash, repeat for years and even potentially a decade of athletics before kids go away, then we have taught people how to handle stress, how to self-soothe when they're stressed, how to celebrate, how to manage defeat, how to take loss, how to, be resilient. And it really is, it's super, super tricky. And Julian and I are such fans of sport. I paddled on 2 different US national teams. My wife is a 3-time world champion whitewater athlete. And she was a rower at Cal. And I think what we see is that sport has given us so much. We were like, let's see how many eggs we can throw against the wall in the late 1900s when we were athletes, and the world has changed. It's gotten a lot more sophisticated and complicated now. The demands of our kids to be, NIL deals, roster caps, transfer portal, TikTok. It's really a wild time that parents can't wrap their heads around.
Is there maybe even an element of like a parent being that other population, the failed athlete that dropped out at 13, that then puts that pressure on their kids in a sense, versus like me, failed athlete at this point later in the career. I did the high school thing. I tried college. It wasn't for me. Right. And so I know like the biggest thing I want my kids to get out of sport is every other thing that you're talking about here. Like, and again, like I want to go and be competitive, but I want my son to have a good time. Right. I want the kid, like, and he knows, like, and this was part of the, like, kind of we had a butting of heads of like different coaching methodologies with like person that was kind of managing our subset of our club organization and our coach. We're like, some of these kids don't belong on the field, and the other kids that are at the higher level, we don't like to call it that because God forbid we hurt someone's feelings. The other kids that are up here are not wanting to show up, right? And I'm like, but like I don't know how to handle the situation. I know that like my son is like, you know, I know if so and so gets on the field that they feel like we're playing a man down. Like, and that's a 7-year-old feeling that way. Like they just want to be competitive. They don't necessarily want to win, but they also know when they're not putting the best representation of their squad out there. It's a very interesting thing.
I would say is that you have a culture problem, and that 7-year-old learned that what mattered was wins and losses, right?
I mean, 7-year-olds want to win. They play video games and they're trying to win. Like I tell my son every game, like all I care from you is your effort. If I see you walking out there, I'm going to be pissed. I tell him every game, Dad will only be mad at you if you don't hustle, because the number one thing that you can control is your effort in anything you do in life. And that's the thing I want you to get out of this.
Well, I tell you what, one of the things you're going to see is if that is the culture where we can't develop, and the only thing that happens is we develop the kids who grow early. There was a woman up the street who played with our daughter and in volleyball, my oldest daughter. And this kid grew really tall, really fast. And both of her parents are like 5'7". And Juliet and I looked at each other and were like, well, this kid's getting all this extra attention because she grew really tall, really fast. And then guess what? She stopped growing and developing. But, if you had said, well, let's put the best 7-year-old or 8-year-old or 10-year-old out there, and that is the thing we value, that's what you're going to get. And what you're going to get is a lot of kids who missed out. And, in this situation, there is a time and a place where it's important that we're putting our best kids out, and we're still creating opportunities for them in practice, and everyone's on the same page. And a coach of 7-year-olds can say, hey, this is about developing skills and about working together and making sure we don't miss some of the beautiful kids that are coming through the process. And we're going to play everyone, and we're going to lose some games because we play everyone. And if you're not okay with that, go find another fucking team. Because, we're 7 here, and your elite 7-year-old, what you're seeing is that parents aren't only living vicariously through their children. That is a little bit too simplistic. Parents are addicted to the adoration and the feedback they get from their kids' success. And, recently on Instagram, I just reposted a story where that young young umpire, she's a teenage umpire, like some kind of middle school game, is getting heckled by parents, and she just cancels the game, because parents are heckling a teenage umpire. And that's insane for a bunch of 10-year-olds, playing. This 16-year-old kid is like, calls the game and walks away. And so again, we're going to have to figure out what is our value as a sport and as a coach and as a team. What do we want? Parents that chirp at kids, parents that chirp at refs, parents that cheer when other kids make a mistake can go get fucked. And we have to reset the culture of this. And that means we may probably have to have an agreement. So in our water polo team, when we go to JOs, our coaches sit everyone down and they say, hey, here's what's up. You're making our job difficult. You're making the refs turn against us. Your job is to cheer when kids do great things. And if you feel frustrated, shout out the name of our club. Go Shaq. And if you're really frustrated, shout out later, go Shaq. And just, put that energy into just shouting this word and let us handle the coaches who we're going to have to work with for the next decade. So I tend not to sit with parents in the stands because they're insane. And I'm like, hey, I've been around world champions and I've paddled in multiple world championships myself. And this thing that you're doing right here is low-level Bush League bullshit. And we really need to reframe this because, again, the promise of sport is to learn how to love moving, joy of working with other together and playing, and theoretically taking that set of skills into the workplace. And for me, all the things we're talking about are how we keep kids durable and safe because if you don't want your kid to have a catastrophic ACL injury, they're going to need some strength conditioning. They're going to need some nutrition. They're going to need some sleep. They're going to need to manage these workloads.
Yeah. Super, super helpful. I mean, the culture is super key, right? You've been around it. And one of the cultures that I grew up in was obviously like combat sports. So you had parents getting after it with each other. And like, it's such a weird vibe when you have parents getting hands on, and it's kind of like almost celebrated in certain instances because it's like, oh, here we go. But it's not really teaching the kids like what it is to be competitive at a high nature, high competition, but also at the same time like sportsman like conduct, And I think that's super critical. I think teaching the parents, sitting them down, need more of that for sure, and I think it'll help them. One of the things I'm thinking about, Kelly, is kind of talking about this framework of nutrition, talking about your book. I want to bring in now your last book that you wrote, just kind of the longevity of things, because obviously nutrition, performance, elite performance athlete, the kids got to go. You're done at high school, you're done at college, maybe you do a pro league, but the percentage of that's super high. Built to Move was an amazing book. I got it right there on the stand somewhere. That book, it came out at a time where this whole thing, Marcos and I work in this field of longevity, and it really spoke on.
That was released in 2022, 3? When was the Built to?
I think 23.
Yeah.
23, yeah. And it was really just at like the high time of like longevity. Everyone was talking about longevity from maybe from like a medicine 3.0 perspective,
biomarkers,
like biomarkers perspective,
span.
lifespan, health span, brain span, and like all these things that I think are super great. But I didn't feel for me personally, to this day, I just don't think a lot of them are also so practical because they're so ingested with like so much research, which I know your stuff is ingested with research too, but practical takeaways. Yeah, getting away from high school now and moving these kids out. What are some of the things you found to be some of the things to help people Build to Move longevity wise? And what are some of those rule sets that you think about as people cater into their later years?
One of the things that happened in the pandemic is that we saw that people were becoming more comfortable with expanding the idea of vital signs. And Juliet and I really felt like, hey, if you can handle knowing what your SaO2 is, your resting heart rate, you can probably understand if you're getting enough fruits and vegetables or enough sleep, or your CO2 tolerance, or your ability to flex your hip in a squat. So what we set out to do with this book is say, look, if we're really trying to help people live better lives, feel better in their bodies, do what they want to do, be better members of their communities and families and households, ultimately, we can take the lessons from high performance. And Juliet and I, again, for the last 20 years, have been working. I see a lot of dirty laundry, all the branches of the government, all the elite military groups, dozens and dozens of pro sports, dozens of universities, lots. And I've coached at the Olympics. Like I'm in there, I'm doing it. And what we see is that the principles here, for me, a middle-aged mountain biker dad who just wants to be less gross for his wife, is the same principles I need to embody if I'm going to go to the Olympics. And the analogy that we use is, and frankly, Bill Wilson is one of my favorite writers, and he has a statement. He says, look, the highest calling of science is to transform the humanities. And it doesn't mean that pure science is important, but really science, the highest calling of science is to make better people and have a better society. And I think the highest calling of sport and performance is to transform our communities and transform our households. So we use this idea of base camp because it's the internet, and the complexity and the sexiness makes it us want to talk about what's the fastest way up Everest. Which color rope should I take? Which crampons and gel is the best way up the Khumbu Icefall? While no one is even at base camp yet. You're not even in a readiness where we can create those things. So the first thing we do if I come into a high performance environment, I'm going to take an audit of these principles in Built to Move to make sure that we're not layering on complexity on top of really dirty process where it's hard to see inputs and outputs. And the second thing is we also understand that a lot of people aren't exercise. They don't like to train. So I had, until recently in the pandemic, I had 4 women in my life who were over 98 years old, and none of them had done high intensity exercise. None of them had taken a mitochondrial supplement. None of them had laid in a red bed. None of them had taken glutathione. Come on. And it turns out that they were, engaged in meaningful community. They had purpose. They had deep relationships. They ate whole foods, right? And so there are some principles there that we recognize that can, that human beings are pretty rad and durable. But if you're going to go faster, we want to make sure these things are in place. And what's important about that other thing is when exercise gets away from us, we can come back to these fundamental principles when we're stressed, when we're overworked, and we can't spend the hour and a half at the gym or get the 150 minutes of exercise a week. The average American goes outside 20 minutes a week. They're outside 20 minutes a week. You want to know why I think sports are so important? Because chances are you're going outside watching a lot more sports, interacting with the community. Nothing to do with sports, had everything to do with that you were actually getting sunshine and in conversation with your neighbors who you can't stand, but you're outside. There are so many things that were going against us and as modern people that we wanted to create sort of a template. And then recognizing, number one, is how are we going to help people put this, what seems like a lot of things to do, when are you going to put that into your day? So we spend a lot of time thinking about how we can make this possible. And I hinted at that a little. How do we constrain the environment? Well, I make breakfast for my daughter so that she's fed when she leaves. That's the kinds of things we want adults to sort of begin to set up. Where are you going to have some agency and control? And what we find is the conversation about longevity is not the conversation about function and durability. So great, you're 100 years old, but you're frail and you're skinny, super cool. But like you're osteoporotic and you're 120 years old, but you suck. And what we feel like as we've gotten older is we're starting to see people take the hits. And the hits could be cancer, the hits could be taking care of your parents, the hits become having to get a new job, the hits could become having a sick child, the hits could become, I crashed on my mountain bike and have to heal. We are more interested in having a body with residual capacity instead of just a body that's built for going the long haul. And, that's very, very different needs.
Oh man, I just want to kind of quote that. Like I'm going to clip that right there because it's so true. I think people are playing this like longevity Olympics of like, oh, I'm just going to live to whenever. But it's like, you're absolutely right. Like, I don't know what stressors are going to come my way. I'm only 31 right now, but like at 60, at 70, like I've been privy to some extreme conversations of I've seen some 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. It's like I've lost a child or two, right? Or I've outgrown certain things, or I do have to pick up another job, and I'm like at this age, or and it's Marcos sees that too, right, Marcos? And it's like we don't know what life's going to throw at us. So to say, hey, we're just going to be here for the long haul, what does that even mean? It's like, no, you have to have durability. Can you take the hits? Can you come back? Can you make it happen? I think putting it like that is so much more beautiful than like, hey, live to 120 for no reason, other than just living there,
And Marco said something really insightful that maybe people didn't pick up on, was that the consistency of going to bed and getting up at the same time. Forget the sleep part. The consistency part is what's really hard for us to wrap our heads around, is that we need bone crushing consistency for decades. And you're not wired to think in those terms. You're not wired. You're maybe wired for a week. And if you're really a ninja, you look at your Google Calendar for 2 days ahead and you sort of know what's happening. Otherwise, we're just sort of playing whack-a-mole all the time. And I just want everyone to know that really, if, like I said, I'm not interested in you taking creatine for this week or next week. I'm interested in you taking creatine for the next 10 or 20 years. And we have to be thinking in those scales, which means that the behaviors we're engaging with have to be consistent, part of the plan. We have to do this over and over again so that it's not something I have to think of. I think we're always, the internet is telling us in, 6 weeks and 3 weeks to new body and, gain this much muscle in 2 weeks. And, that's super. I mean, I want to, add 100% to my bench press, taking a supplement in 2 weeks. That sounds super cool. But, cocaine and steroids don't even work like that. So the key here, one of my friends who was a world champion said once, someone asked him about strength training. He's like, oh, how about this? Lift something brutally heavy once a week for 10 years. And let me know what you figure out in 10 years. Like, you're going to be a monster in 10 years if you lifted something heavy once a week for 10 years. That's a lot of exposure of picking up something heavy. And I think that's the problem. Right or wrong, it's hard for us to conceptualize how we're going to do these things. And if you do a body shred, recomp, diet, whatever, and you cannot wait to go back to your other life, then that thing is not sustainable. And really what you should never have to take a break from your vacation, or a vacation from your diet, a vacation from your nutrition, your sleep. It's not how this works.
The consistency angle. Yeah. Well, you have to be like, I am the type of person that gets to do this versus I have to, right? Like it's all that like psychological framework. And it's taken, I feel like as coaching practitioners for myself and Seamus, like what we started doing 10 years ago versus now has evolved to, really kind of broach this conversation more, because I'm always asking that question. I mean, I have a client right now, he's been killing it. It's like we're 6 months in, and I was like, how do you feel? How do you feel like what you would do comparatively when you did this before? He's like, I feel like I can do this all like in perpetuity. I was like, that's exactly what you hired me for, right? I know you could have gotten there faster, but can you sustain this so that you can play with your grandkids and do all these things? And now he has better mobility. He's off of certain medications. He's focusing on, different things. It's like amazing. I got to see him yesterday. He's dealing with a little shoulder issue. So I was giving him some guidance with like, hey, let's just try to like get our scap set a little bit better with whatever limited equipment you have. And I hadn't seen him in probably like 3 or 4 weeks in person. I was like, this guy's really killing it. Went from doing absolutely nothing to training fairly consistently 4 days a week, right? And then it's just the consistency. Like you're being consistent. Today he messaged me.
And everyone, I mean, I don't know who's listening to this, but if you can have beginner gains, take all the beginner gains. You know what I mean? Like going from 95 to 96 is so hard. I got kids who are pitching 98 miles an hour and we want to get them to 100 miles an hour. The mental gymnastics, mindset, nuance, voodoo black magic that we have to get that last 2 miles an hour, it's really hard. And when people begin to put multiple systems at work, and just doesn't have to be perfect, just better, it's remarkable what happens. And what's really interesting, and I love that we can have this framework because we've been talking about kids, we're talking about nutrition, is that I was at a workshop, sort of a high performance conference, and they brought in sort of an avatar dad who's like rides his bike, tech bro, buys all the supplements that Huberman says, And I was like, hey, can you mentioned that you have 3 kids under 20. Can you talk about how you talk about this with them and how that, and he's like, oh, no, they don't do any of that. This is just for me. And I was like, what? Like, I think everyone in the room was like, what? And I was like, how many grams of protein does your 16-year-old eat a day? He's like, I have no idea. And that is really, for me, the allegory for, when we have someone in the family, and I don't mean family, let's say household, that's a better term, who begins to be the nucleus, the agent of change, that's where we'll start to see valence, change, sort of concentric circles of influence happen. And that's why we put the household as the primary piece here, because if we have a parent or a household or a guardian eating and doing this certain way, it's going to impact everyone in the household.
Yeah.
When this is what our house does. We make 3 vegetables and we've done that forever. Then my kid goes to college and her ginger beef stir fry has 3 vegetables in it. And so, what we're really after is parents do need a framework that can't be body composition only focused. Because if one of the things that happens having 2 daughters and being in strength conditioning fitness is that if I want to set my kid up for an eating disorder, I can do it like that.
Boom. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, like that's the way to think about the household. Talking about households, I saw your little house tour on a YouTube video. I think like Juju Mufu, like I love the setup that you have, like not in the garage, not in the backyard. You have the garage and the backyard, but as you're going along in the house, there's a little gymnastics thing here. There's a foam rolling thing here. There's this. And I'm like, there's a hanging thing here. I'm like, you're getting movement every single which of the way.
Well, we still live in a cool Eichler. It's a mid-century modern house. We love our, heath tile fireplace and our concrete floors. And you don't have to make it nerdy. You don't have to be a total nerd. But you walk into our garage, and again, you can see our thinking here. And let me just preface this by saying, I may have owned a gym for 25 years now.
One of the OGs, right? One of the OGs.
Right. But, the key is making it easy so that when I have a window, I can go do it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, Marcus, that your client is recognizing is that, fitness and health doesn't happen in this 1 hour and then I put it away. Mm-hmm. If I have 20 minutes to train, I'm going to go do something for 20 minutes, but then the rest of my behaviors are just as important. And, if you watch the Tour de France, there's a great documentary, it's a couple years old now, where they follow the the chef of a legit Tour de France team, and you would be shocked at how much energy goes into how they fuel and the whole foods around that nutrition. Don't get me wrong, on the bike, they're going to eat, 4 or 5 gels an hour, which is not healthy and not great. But, on the other sides, they're eating as much like beautiful food. And we see the same thing when I'm in Premier Soccer. A few years ago, the 49ers made an investment to bring in a chef and a kitchen into the stadium and serve year round. And guess what happened? Athletes started performing better. The culture changed, because if you're a 22-year-old millionaire and you can go get 3 meals a day prepared by a chef, you're going to do that. It means you're going to run into people. And really, we see that this food piece and food culture is a real leverage of having a better life.
Yeah.
And I know we're coming up on time, and I just want to say one thing. You got me thinking about this. And my wife made a comment the other day about, like, you do realize that our family's normal is not other people's normal. And I was like, well, I'm making it our normal. Like, the fact, like, but your parents are there to help you. I was like, yes, I want a nuclear family. That's why my parents live a mile down the road, so that the grandparents come over 2, 3, 4 every night. We're having dinner together, because I want that to be the thing that we have. So,
You can do it if you're lucky enough to do that and your family's intact. That way, your organizing principle, welcome to being a human being. I mean, you're not, parents, I think, are just stretched thin, and we're running from fire to fire to fire. And, what we're trying to do is build in process into the system so that you don't have to think about it. If you open the door and it's just pizza, boxes hanging out your fridge, that's what you're going to get, And our kids complain bitterly about the fact that we're what would they call an ingredients household. There's you have to make food. There's nothing to eat. We're like, what are you talking about? I just spent $3 at Trader Joe's. Like, there's a lot to eat in there. And they're like, no, you don't understand. There's no soup dumplings. I'm like, oh, I get it. Okay.
We got to go get those.
And my son made that comment today too. He's like, you know what? I've realized, like, I'm a type of kid that, I just like eating ingredients right now. He's like, I like eating like an apple and this, that, and the other. And like this morning I was like, kind of by design, like, I want you to be like, you know what it is, right? Yes, you have some of the fun stuff too, but again, just shaping up your environment. I think that was kind of the whole summary of the last few minutes here, was like, your environment at home. You're like, if I got 20 minutes, I got 20 minutes to get it in, right? And if the food that's around is just food, you can kind of eat a little more ad libitum, and you're not as worried about the kids grabbing stuff that you are worried about, like a red dye number 40 or whatever. Like so there's just little things of setting up an environment.
As much sauce as you want. Knock yourself out, kid.
Yeah, it's gonna be so hard. And I think, for Seamus and I's roles of coaching the parents in the room, over and over again, and thinking about how that reflects upon, the youth, right? And then obviously helping the parents go play. Like, my son wants to do something with me. The other day, he's like, Dad, I don't want to do homework unless it's with you. I was like, all right, I guess this is the new part of, second grade, is that 30 minutes a day. Like, Dad has homework too. And I'm like, guess what? Next year, he probably want nothing to do with me. He's like, I already got it done, Dad. So I'm like, I got to relish those moments. The environment is this for right now. And being able to change, I think CrossFit really helped that immensely. And I owe a lot to just expect the unexpected, understand that you're going to learn how to make space for new things. And, like you just said about everything you've written about in all your books, you're really focusing on, I think it's probably a little bit of a memoir in a sense, right? It's different phases of your career, and you're expressing in the books of how you're doing.
Yeah. Well, it probably is. We're running into these unique challenges. And again, we're at this phase now where both our daughters, we have more year of, high school with our senior. And what we've just come through is, how can we reapply these same sets of principles to solve a unique set of problems that we're facing right now. And right now, I think, with all at risk of sounding bitter anyway, our world is a crazy place, and sport could be the last place we all get together. Sport could be the last front porch. And that's not the reason to do sport, but it is a reason why sport can be more extraordinary right now. So let's get it right. Let's protect as many kids, and let's create as many connections and opportunities to interact in our community, in our society. And when a coach from a local, professional team asks for me for something, they're like, oh man, thanks so much. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You mean so much to the Bay Area. How can I help? You give us all reasons to cheer for the Sharks or the Warriors or the Valkyries. So it's important that we are thinking at that societal scale and giving ourselves reasons to come together. So high school sports is a fantastic reason.
We have the best time going to a game. That's another unique thing for sure. You don't even know, like in your backyard, if you know someone that has a kid that's playing on a high school team, just go out there and go support something. I mean, our kids had a ball. It cost us nothing. We literally went and supported one of the older brothers on the team, and all the kids were just like lighting up because like we know that kid, got to see him play. It was the coolest thing.
That is the promise. I think again we can take, and honestly, I mean, you guys are experts in this lifestyle and in nutrition piece, but that's come out of sport. It didn't come out of any other thing. It came out of high performance environments. How do we take what we've learned in these situations, and then how do we apply it back to the rest of the world? And that is science. That is the goal of high performance, high risk, high stake, because it allows us to see inputs and outputs much more clearly.
Kelly, it was an honor to have you on for this hour. I know we're a little bit over on time, but a few things. We'll get everything situated for you in the comments below, or like the description below of all the links and all that, because you're doing so much with like the Ready State, all the courses you have there, and all the things. I want to ask you one last thing. This episode comes out in about 4 weeks. Is there anything for you in about 4 weeks that's happening that like is front facing or you're excited about that you're going to be doing? Is it like a talk or a seminar that people could go to and kind of spend some time with you?
Thank you so much. We're just doing our thing. This year we launched the Starrett system, which is a strength conditioning lifestyle training group for people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, recognizing that, how do we speak to these parents of, busy working people who want to, feel better in their body and be part of a community. But otherwise, you can always see what's going on. We're all around, we're teaching, we're coaching. I'd love to retire, but there's just too much fun stuff to work and do right now. So someday I'll retire, but we're out there, and we're on the Instagram and all the webs at the Ready State.
Yeah. I think retiring looks like for you is like maybe other people manage it, but I think you're always going to be tinkering. I think you've got that thing about you.
That's the ADD, man. That's the ADD. I can't help. This is all I got. I'm unhireable anywhere else.
Nah, I hear you. Well, Kelly, thank you so much. Marcus, you want to close this out? Kelly, stay on after we hit stop here, though. We got to make sure it uploads.
Yeah, this is a real big moment for us. When we sat down and started this a little over 2 years ago, almost at year 3 now, and we had some Mount Rushmore people, and you were definitely on it. So to have this full circle moment where we've elevated enough to inquire and get you on, we're super appreciative that you gave us an hour of your time, and just wanted to let you know, like, you've impacted my life in an incredible way. I mean, going to your gym, I think it was about a decade ago, in CrossFit San Francisco, remember snatching and some of your coaches being like, man, that's pretty impressive. And I was like, now I look at it, I got the memory of going with my mom and someone else who's been to the games as a master's athlete. Meanwhile, at the time I was really chasing that. So I was like, man, all these cool moments have come on the back of, influential people like you. And we sought out your location. It took a little bit of a hike to get there because of all the great work you were doing and the way you impacted me in my early sport phase, where I was like, dude, how can I get more limber? And I remember watching your little like workshop for like a 2-week thing. And I just did it every day because you dropped a new video, and like, I figured out how to like unlock my hamstrings because of you. So it was like, again, your knowledge knows no bounds. I really appreciate it. And I think everybody else can totally, gravitate to your page nowadays and look at stuff that was 10 years old and still get an amazing amount of like education and information. And then,
the
diving into
T-spine unlock video, Marcos, the T-spine unlock video unlocked my back, dude.
You taught me how to release this. I was like, I watched videos. You talked about cues and like melting in certain muscle groups with my lower back and my glute with the lacrosse ball. And I still, like, to this day, like, it's so cool to like just being able to spend an hour with you. So guys, go give Kelly a follow, go, over to the Ready State, support him. We got plenty of books if you want to listen. I got all of his on audiobook because I like kind of hearing everything. I should probably get the physical. Actually, I have physical copies over here too. They were gifts, as all of our CrossFit friends were like, hey, have you read this? I was like, no. And they gifted to me. So again, the library keeps growing. Appreciate you so much. And guys, thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed it.